goes the record, and you're good to go.
Good morning, Marks. We have so much to talk about in the world of wrestling this week. There's so many of us here on the show right now. I can't even begin to tell you how many different opinions we're going to have. But we're going to be talking about Elimination Chamber. We're going to be talking about Paul White coming to AEW. We're going to talk about AEW Revolution and the most prestigious wrestling awards that are out there, the Wrestling Observer News Awards. We're going to talk about all that shit this week on
Breaking Down. You don't know what hard times are, Daddy. The cream rise to the top, oh yeah. Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. You just made the list. This right here is a family. Hey, this is professional wrestler and professional podcaster Colt Boom Boom Cabana.
My name is Killer Cross.
This is The Smoke Show, Scarlett Bordeaux.
What's up, guys? The F Machine, Brian Cage.
This is Ryan from Pro Wrestling Tees.
Sadly, you are not listening to The Art of Wrestling, but you made a decent choice because you're listening.
You are now listening to...
And you're listening
And you're listening to
You listen to Breaking Down the Ring.
Breaking Down the Ring.
Breaking Down the Ring.
Breaking Down the Ring.
Breaking Down the Ring. Bring it down.
Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
It is true. It's damn true. You did make a decent choice because you are listening to, you're paying attention to, you are touching yourself to the most inappropriate wrestling podcast in the motherfucking world. You're listening to Breaking Down the Ring, and we are your ring crew.
It's Smith Daddy Cool.
It is Koenig 19. And it's just me and Smitty for now. Word on the street is Mikey will be here in a little while. He was part of an all-male burlesque show last night. He had a bunch of latex on, so he's still in the process of shaving all that off of his body. We wish him the best of luck with that. Keep him in your thoughts and prayers. But for now, we've got a lot to talk about. Well, we're going to start today off with the Elimination Chamber, of course. I didn't change my background solely for that purpose, and maybe because I forgot, but mostly for that purpose. Smitty, last week, Elimination Chamber. We're going to run down each match. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on them, though, because, again, we do have a lot to talk about this week. But if you did watch it, I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was the best pay-per-view. I don't think it was the worst pay-per-view, but it was good. You know, I mean, it was an limit. Yeah, I mean, it was Elimination Chamber. It could have been better. I mean, almost every pay-per-view WWE puts out could be better, but, it's worth a watch. So to start things off, we had on the pre-show, Keith Lee was supposed to be in the U.S. title picture, but, for whatever reasons, he was not involved in the match. So they had a fatal four-way to determine who would be in the match with Bobby Lashley and Riddle. So we had Mustafa Ali, John Morrison, Ricochet, and Elias in the match. John Morrison took the win in that match. I was a little surprised at first, but then I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. How did you feel about it, Smitty?
I felt with Keith Lee being put on the shelf, I had a feeling they were going to, this is a card subject due to changes. Always something you hear at every wrestling show.
Yep.
So with John Morrison winning, I would have definitely changed my pick from last year retaining. But everything that happens afterwards, I'm all right with, I guess.
Yeah, I think I would have made it my pick different too. And for anybody that's out there that was playing along with pro wrestling scorecards, I think that was one of the things that was up in the air. They put out a poll on their Twitter, like how they should handle that when it's running right into the pay-per-view. It was that day, as far as I can remember, just a couple hours before that they removed Keith Lee from the match officially, and we didn't know who his replacement was going to be. So then the scorecard guys are like, well, do we count any points, or do we do this or do that? So hopefully anybody that was playing pro wrestling scorecards along with us submitted a vote to that poll, and hopefully in the future they can come up with a good solution for that. Because it's one of the beautiful things about wrestling is that, like Smitty said, cards subject to change. You fucking never know what's going to happen. But John Morrison ultimately did win the match. He ended up in the U.S. title picture later on in the night. When the pay-per-view actually started, we had the Smackdown Elimination Chamber to kick things off. With that, you had Daniel Bryan, Cesaro, Kevin Owens, Jey Uso. Fuck, man. Who else was in the match, Smitty?
Sami Zayn, King Corbin, only you missed.
And Sharon Corbin. Yeah, they were all in the match. This one, I had picked originally Kevin Owens to win. In hindsight, that was obviously a bad pick. I just thought maybe they might stab that fucking feud one more time, just beat that horse to death.
And that's why it wasn't a bad pick, because I picked him as well, because WWE has a habit of beating a dead horse.
Exactly. I wanted to see Cesaro win. I feel like they're pushing him with one hand right now. They're not really giving him that full push, and the dude's overdue. I mean, he is pound for pound one of the strongest guys out there in WWE right now. He's a good worker in the ring. I like what he's really over right now. He's got that face thing happening for him, and it's working. But unfortunately, like Bully Ray said earlier this week on his podcast, he's a good hand. So you can put him in the ring with anybody, and he's going to have a good match no matter who he's wrestling with. I do think they need to, and I think it probably won't happen until after WrestleMania, but I think they need to give him that push, whether it be for the Universal title or maybe even the Intercontinental title, but give him, he's very deserving of it. He's been around for a long time, and everything I just said, he's very deserving of it. But anyway,
he's a Kofi push.
He does. But we're sidecasting.
I figured Cesaro wasn't winning that match because of what they're doing with him right now with the Seth Rollins angle. I kind of saw it 2 weeks prior to. I'm like, well, I would love for him to win it, but I knew they were going to push the Seth Rollins story after.
Well, and that's the thing, is that he is getting involved with Seth Rollins, and I think that's a good opportunity for him. He's been getting these wins over Daniel Bryan clean. So that'll be good for him, and hopefully we see him continue to get pushed. Ultimately in that match, we did see Daniel Bryan come out on top. It was him and Jey Uso, the last two guys that were standing in the chamber. The match itself was good. It wasn't anything too crazy. I think they just kind of let these dudes go, but they didn't have any really crazy spots involved in the match, at least that I can remember off the top of my head.
Jey Uso jumping off Eddie and everything.
That was at the very end. That was a cool spot, and Daniel Bryan got his knees up. Kevin Owens got his arm slammed in the chamber at one point, and but the match was definitely a good match. It wasn't disappointing. I mean, the whole Daniel Bryan underdog story, that does work. For me, I'm just kind of meh about the whole thing. But Daniel Bryan did get the win, and the winner of this match would go on to face Roman Reigns, which we all kind of thought would be later in the night. But in the back of your mind,
except Z.
Well, and he had it right. In the back of your mind, you're like, well, Roman's going to come out right after this match, and he's going to fucking pummel this dude. And that's exactly what happened. The chamber lifts up. Here comes Roman Reigns. His music hits. Bam. And he's in the ring ready to take out Daniel Bryan. And he did. It was basically a squash match. I mean, it was 2 minutes, somewhere around there. And
minute 32 seconds.
he put Daniel Bryan in the guillotine, and it was over. Smitty, what do you think about them having Daniel Bryan win this match? And I personally didn't expect whoever won the match to beat Roman, but how do you feel about that? And then moving forward, now him and Daniel Bryan have this thing going on SmackDown, you know?
See, Daniel Bryan getting squashed after the Chamber. I think it's trying to add some meat to the whole situation of this whole Fastlane thing, which I don't think anybody really cares about. This is literally just fodder going into Mania at this point. Yes. We used the F word today.
Didn't take too long.
Yeah. Well, but then everything that happened on SmackDown just feeling kind of diluted because now Edge is like, oh, maybe me and Daniel Bryan could take on Jey Uso and Roman at Fastlane. And Daniel Bryan trying to get himself a title shot. And pretty much you pretty much only have 2 weeks to build from this pay-per-view to Fastlane. It's just, for me, it's just sloppy. It's sloppy, lazy booking.
Do you think that they should remove the pay-per-view between the Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania?
I think that's a great idea because at that point, you have time to actually get some actual story building at this point.
Yeah, I agree because, we're not that far from WrestleMania. And I think when you have a WrestleMania that's going to be 2 nights, so this is 2 years in a row they're going to have it at 2 nights. This could be something that we see for the foreseeable future. Like you said, Fastlane is the F word. You know what I mean? And you got Edge on Friday night who comes out and he's like, well, I don't think it's really fair that Daniel Bryan is getting a title match, blah, blah, blah. In my mind, it's like, well, it's not that big of a deal because you won the Royal Rumble, and the stipulation to winning the Royal Rumble is you get a match at WrestleMania. So fuck Fastlane. Who fucking cares? Whoever you end up fighting at WrestleMania, it's still your title match. But on the other hand, I do kind of see the point with Daniel Bryan jumping ahead of him in line for the title. But I like what you're saying with Fastlane, seeing maybe Daniel Bryan tag team with Edge against Roman and Jey. I think that'd be a pretty cool match. Because on SmackDown, you saw Daniel Bryan with a rematch. He was going to have a rematch with Roman, but instead Jey stuck his nose in, and they had a match, and they had a double count out. So
yeah, and the stipulation was if Daniel won, he got Roman at Fastlane.
Yep. So now it's kind of up in the air on what we're going to see at Fastlane. But back to my point when I asked you if they should eliminate that pay-per-view, I would say they definitely should moving forward. Elimination Chamber, and then you give yourself plenty of time to build Mania. But anyway, so after that match, after we saw Roman squash Daniel Bryan, we saw Edge come out, give Roman the spear. That was ultimately the signal that Edge was going to pick Roman Reigns to be his partner, be his opponent at WrestleMania.
Big surprise.
Right. Do you like that match?
I don't hate it. I don't like it either.
Do you think they're going to put the belt on Edge?
No. Edge is going on his back for Roman.
Now, will we see Edge? I agree, but are we going to see him in a retirement situation where he goes out on his back for good? I don't think so because he's got this contract for 3 years or something to that effect.
So I don't think it's a retirement thing. I think it's one of those things where Edge said himself, he's there. The 3 years he's going to be there, he's not going to be a part-timer. He's going to be there. And he spoke about guys he would love to work with. He said he would love to work with guys like Cesaro, Daniel Bryan. I think within these 3 years, we do see the better part of Edge. We will see a heel Edge after Mania to work with some of these guys.
And you know what? They kind of, it might be me just kind of overthinking it, but they kind of hinted at that a little bit with the way he was talking to Daniel Bryan and his attitude towards the whole thing. I think a lot of people would like to see that. But
also his interaction with Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce
at
the beginning of the show. So I can see that happen. I can see Edge there as a full timer for these 3 years, but I also see Edge possibly because Edge has a mind for the business. He wants WWE to succeed. He wants the business to advance. I don't see Edge pulling a Goldberg where he just comes in, wins everything, and only time he'll drop and sit on his back is when he's ready to go.
Right. And he can still clearly go in the ring.
I think he's done with Orton, yeah.
If you were on the fence about it before, lasting that long in the Royal Rumble was pure evidence. Whether or not he was getting his ass kicked and resting a while, it doesn't fucking matter. You were still in the Rumble for nearly an hour, if not more.
Just about. Looking at it right now.
He can definitely still go, and so long as he can stay healthy, I think it's only a good thing that a guy like Edge with his history is still in it, still involved in some kind of decent storyline. So we'll have to see what happens. Our next match, we had Bobby Lashley against Riddle, against the winner of the Fatal 4-Way that they had on the pre-show, John Morrison, for the U.S. title. Bobby Lashley fucking dominated the majority of this match. Riddle and Morrison looked good. I actually thought this was a pretty good match. But ultimately, Mikey's favorite wrestler in the world right now, Riddle, won the U.S. title.
His Evil Knievel gear.
If you would have told me, a year ago that Riddle would win the U.S. title and be involved in this push and moving forward with his character, and I'd have been like, that's cool. To be honest, Mikey, as we know, has never been a big fan of Riddle, but I think he works really good in the ring. I'm kind of in the middle on his character, but I'd have been cool with that. But at this point, going to these accusations that they've had on Riddle going for a while now with his sexual assault and so on and so on. I mean, is that really who you want to have carrying your mid-card title? Any title for that matter, but your mid-card title.
But look what they just say. Velveteen Dream, Patrick Clark, has not been seen on NXT television since everything's happened with him.
And that dude was way over.
And yeah, he was one of the most over guys on the NXT brand, but you have not seen him. Yet Riddle's in pretty much the same situation, and you're putting titles on him. I understand that. I'm not cool with. I'm not cool with that. As a performer and a character, I think Riddle's all right as a character. I like Riddle as a performer in the ring. So it's just WWE's choices, which we have already stated many times over, have not always been the best. Austin Theory is still in high-profile situations on NXT as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to probably just kind of tune out of Ring of Honor if I found out that Marty Scurll is actually coming back, because he was part of that New Japan Strong and an angle of Rocky Romero. So there's a whole thing. It's these companies need to handle these situations better. If Riddle winning that title is we're rewarding this man, this shitty human being, for his work ethic. If that's the case, don't make it a double standard, or.
Well, that's the issue. That's the issue I have. Double standards, wrestling in the real world, whatever. They make me fucking nuts. And you have, like you said, a guy like Riddle who can work in the ring. But when I look at Velveteen Dream, that dude is the total package. That guy is one of the best workers they have. I feel like he's one of the best characters they have. And with very little effort. And if they would have groomed him even more and kept working with Velveteen Dream, he'd be, they're looking for these top guys like a John Cena, like a Stone Cold, so on and so on.
He's a homegrown talent.
Yeah, Velveteen Dream could have been one of your next guys, arguably could have been that next guy. Okay, so he has this issue. that's his problem, and you're dealing with it the way you need to. And props to you for that. If that's why he hasn't been on TV, then I totally agree with that. But you have Matt Riddle, and he's not the next
similar
guy.
situation.
And it's a similar situation. So I don't understand the logic. I don't understand why they continue to push him the way that they are. And you can't, as a human being, I just feel like you can't really turn a blind eye to that. So I can't support Riddle winning this match. I mean, like I said, as a character, just as him on TV, fine, whatever. He's not the best. He's not the worst. He's a good worker. But when in this day and age, when kayfabe is pretty much out the window, and guys like
It's
us,
great.
and a lot of people understand what's happening, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, because the kayfabe thing is great because you look at guys like MJF and the Miz who pretty much live their gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really say it's dead. It's pretty much on life support.
Right. And that's why I think like guys like MJF and the Miz, they're what the industry needs. When I see MJF making fun of anybody and everybody, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, purple, handicapped, whatever, he's going to stick it to you.
14 years old, 38 years old.
Right. That's what it is. But he's not sexually assaulting people. He's not committing hate crimes. You know what I mean? He's just living a character. He's just talking, but I digress. Let's move on because we could sit here and talk about that all fucking day. So Riddle ultimately winning the match. He's the new U.S. champion. We moved on to Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax against Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair for the women's tag team titles. Shayna and Nia winning that match. Reginald got involved trying to help Sasha Banks. He gave her a bottle of champagne and this, that, and the other. I personally think the whole Reginald thing sucks.
Yeah, but I'm glad that Nia and Shayna won to a certain degree.
Yes.
Because honestly, I think I've said this already since the Dusty Women's Tag Team Tournament was announced. They just need to put those titles down to NXT where those titles actually have some type of value.
Mm-hmm.
And Bianca Belair and Banks, they just didn't make any sense for them to put those titles. This is just another fodder match for those titles at that point.
Totally agree.
We need to put some relevance on those titles and give them some kind of but this is WWE we talking about, and they don't care about tag teams, to be honest. Look at all the tag team titles in that company. Outside of the UK titles, which was I think I'm probably one of the only people on Earth that probably every now and again catches NXT UK. Those are the only tag titles in that whole company that probably mean anything because they have at least somewhat of a healthy division.
I'll never understand it because I've always been a fan of tag team matches. Let's edit that part
we
out.
accept you.
I've always been a fag. No, I've always been a fan of tag team matches. There's that just added extra element of drama. The whole team element, and you've got tag teams that are fucking over. Like you have the Street Profits who are really over right now and are amazing in the ring. But then you put together these makeshift tag teams like Sasha and Bianca. Okay, if you're not really giving a fuck about tag teams, then who fucking cares? You didn't need this match. I could think of at least 2 or 3 other matches you might have been able to have on the card rather than this crap. And the match was
Big E. You could have put Big E and Apollo Crews on there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's very unfortunate that they're pushing tag teams to the wayside. But like I mentioned last week, if they're going to do this whole thing with the Dusty Cup winners, Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai facing Nia and Shayna for the titles, I really feel like they should let Dakota and Raquel have those titles. Even though it's their first chance at the titles, do something out of the norm. Give them the titles, have them be on NXT, because why else are you having Nia and Shayna go to NXT to defend the titles? Why else are you having them get that opportunity? So put them on NXT at least make the women's title relevant, because you are sitting there preaching the women's revolution and all that. So have that mean something, you know?
Also, keep those damn titles away from the main women's title. We've been pretty much done it for a year now.
Yes.
And the women's title, whatever women's champion is always there. Outside of when Sasha and Bailey had it, it's been kind of those titles. None of the titles mean jacket shit at that point. Like Asuka was an afterthought when her and Charlotte were tag champions.
Yeah, and her women's championship, you know, like they didn't really give a shit about it. It was mostly the focus on Charlotte. You know what I mean? So Charlotte's a tag team champion. Charlotte's in this feud with Lacey. But where's your focus on the women's champion? Nobody, like you said, she's an afterthought.
That and pregnancy, it keeps getting away.
Yeah. Moving on from that, we had the Raw Elimination Chamber. So this match, I mean, it was pretty stacked. You had the champion Drew McIntyre. The match was for the WWE Championship. So you had Drew McIntyre, you had Sheamus, Jeff Hardy. You had
AJ Styles with homos.
AJ Styles. Man,
Kofi.
well, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. You had
Kofi and Sheamus.
This match definitely good for the main event, and it worked really well. I liked the one thing. There were a couple flubs here, and you know, you had
AJ, what the fucks? Yeah,
AJ Styles get in the match because almost ripped off the back panel of his chamber. And in any other situation in Elimination Chamber, I really wouldn't have thought twice about it. But you also had the fact that Sheamus was going to be the last person out of the chamber. And it really just didn't make any fucking sense. Like, he didn't need to do that. Like, ultimately, you want to be in the chamber until you're released, to give the guys in the ring the opportunity to wear themselves out, to, you know, be on the losing end of a finisher or whatever. So AJ Styles also, just go ahead.
Like, it's kind of like, just to play devil's advocate, I understand him wanting to get out, because remember, Orton, like, there was a whole shock of Kofi just cleanly pinning Orton right then and there. So when Kofi, when Kofi, was it Kofi that pinned Orton, or was it Hart?
I think it was Kofi.
Yeah, Kofi. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. So when Kofi pins Orton, and Orton's the first guy gone, and then Orton just goes nuts and RKOs everybody in the fucking ring. I can understand having the anxiety and wanting to get out, but but I also agree it doesn't make sense for almost to just break him out and him to run around, especially with Orton still not out of the damn chamber.
Why and why did Omos get kicked out? It's a no disqualification match for all intents and purposes, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that whole thing was just kind of like, ugh. Like, you know, they get away with, you know, you get away with Tony Storm, you know, knocking the announce table over. Okay, I can move on from that, but something as blatant as that, it doesn't look good.
That also, like, if that was the case, why didn't if you want to make these feuds personal, why didn't McIntyre just go in and kick Sheamus' chamber open while he had the time to do it?
Yeah,
you could have had that done. Another thing that kind of we already know you're building a Randy Orton versus The Fiend at Mania. Orton getting pinned by Kofi personally was a highlight for me, because I'm a big Kofi fan and the history between Kofi and Orton. But you could have put some of the bullcrap you put on Raw somewhere in the chamber where The Fiend and Alexa Bliss are fucking with Orton again. Build more of that story. Make me a little bit more interested to try to watch Raw for this story, at least.
Well, and you know, it just, I mean, honestly, in hindsight, when you look back at the Elimination Chamber match, it feels like, I'm going to use this word again, the whole thing was just fodder.
It was just
for the ultimate, you know, spin at the end of the match. You saw Drew McIntyre win the match. Big fucking surprise there. So Drew McIntyre wins the match. Chamber lifts up, and Bobby Lashley comes down, who lost earlier in the night in the U.S. title match, and he beats the snot out of Drew McIntyre. So you're kind of sitting there thinking, oh, well, maybe this is, Drew's next feud, whatever. But, foreshadowing with the Miz in the locker room talking to Bad Bunny and, talking to this guy and whatever.
MVP.
Yeah,
Cut
you
that
knew
deal.
that ultimately something was going to happen here. And then all of a sudden you hear, awesome. And here comes the Miz. Chamber raises up. Lashley kicks the shit out of Drew. Miz runs down. And he didn't
By
get
himself.
the pin. Yep. And he didn't get the pin initially. Drew kicked out. But then he hit him with his finisher.
Skull crushing finale.
Got the 1, 2, 3. Miz is your new WWE champion. Smitty, there were mixed reviews online about this that I saw anyway. Some people were really cool with it. Some people not so much.
Yeah, some people were pissed. But you know what? Fuck those people. The Miz
Honestly.
The Miz is somewhat like Kofi. The guy was one of those guys that people thought would not make it within the WWE. 16 years now. 16 years in WWE. This is the second world championship. The one thing I don't like is they say he's the first guy to become a dual 2-time Grand Slam champion. Go around twice. Like he's not.
Oh, really?
Even under the current format. Under current format, possibly because the world title is no longer active. But guys like Rey Mysterio is a two-time Grand Slam champion. He's a 2-time world champion, multiple-time IC champion, multiple-time 2-time United States champion, and a multiple-time tag team champion. And not to mention, he's got 3 cruiserweight titles under him. Chris Jericho, Triple H. But
when you say something like that, that's fine that, ultimately he's not the first one to do it, but that puts him up there. These names you just listed off, you know what I mean?
This makes him one of the most decorated champions. I don't like the fact you're touting him as the first time 2-time Grand Slam champion. That's my only issue with it. Also, I like the Miz, and I'm just glad that Money in the Bank case is gone again at this point.
Well, and the Money in the Bank case, it's been almost a year, like somewhere around 9 months, maybe 8.5 months. I like the Miz too. And, you're talking about, like you said, this dude's been in WWE forever now. And, I remember watching him on the 10th season of The Real World. He was on Real World New York. I was like, I don't know, 15, 16 years old. I watched The Real World. I'm sorry to say.
We're the MTV generation, Nick. We watched The Real World.
And he walked around that house as a champion. He called himself The Miz. And then I took a break from watching wrestling. And when I came back to see The Miz, I was like, holy shit, he really did it. He's really in WWE. And he's doing it. He's not just like a jobber. He's a champion, But regardless of that, you can't say he can't work in the ring. A dude that's been there that long, he can work in the ring. He's great on the mic. You can't say he's not great on the mic. He's got that heat as a heel. He's a way better heel than a face, but he makes you hate him, and he's doing his job, and that's what he's there to do. And he's there to be conniving and sneaky and to show up with the Money in the Bank briefcase and to get the Money in the Bank briefcase back after John Morrison cashed it in for him. And it was like, oh, well, the Miz didn't cash it in. That's the type of shit that you get from a heel character. So I think the whole thing worked. I know, like, for instance, I got my mother-in-law involved in watching wrestling a couple of years ago. She can't fucking stand it. She's so pissed. She's a huge Drew McIntyre mark, and she can't fucking stand that the Miz is the champion right now. But that's what he's there to do. Yes, that's why he's there. The following night on Raw, we saw the Miz in a celebration type situation where, he's out there with John Morrison, and then, you kind of knew that Bobby Lashley was going to come out. There was something that was going to be some kind of stipulation there, and there is. And Bobby Lashley wants a title shot. The Miz trying to back out of it. But ultimately, we're going to see that this week on Raw tomorrow. As a matter of fact, Bobby Lashley and the Miz championship. So with Fastlane coming, with WrestleMania coming, do you see them putting the title on Lashley? Is Miz like a transitional champion? A lot of people are saying that.
Yeah, I can see him as a transitional champion at this point.
Mhm.
I would love to see Bobby Lashley as champion. I think Bobby Lashley is one of those guys that's long overdue to be a WWE champion. He's always had that look that Vince McMahon wants outside of one thing.
Wonder what that could be.
And I would love to see a black champion going to WrestleMania as well. Going to Mania. Do I think he gets it on Monday? I don't think he gets it on Monday. I think they save him getting it till Fastlane somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I think Miz weasels his way out of losing his title at least once.
I agree. And I like the idea of Bobby Lashley becoming champion. When he first came back, he was a little, you could see some rust on him, and it just, it was just, he was kind of there. But the last 6 months to a year, his mic skills have improved tremendously. Honestly, ever since the whole Lana thing got away from him, his mic skills have improved. His in-ring work has improved. Not to say that he was a bad wrestler, but just after that hiatus, he was, wasn't really working to the best of his ability. But now he is. And with him involved in the Hurt Business, I think if you make him the champion, that's not only going to sell the Hurt Business even more, which, they've kind of built themselves up. And you're going to not only build them up, but you're going to build him up. And the Hurt Business could ultimately be in the top 5, top 10 of the all-time greatest stables, factions, whatever you want to call them. I think it's a good idea, and let him have a run with it. Not just a transitional thing. Let him have a good run with it.
Because that's what the rumor is now, is that he's going to win the title just to drop it back. He's going to be another transitional champion so Drew can get his moment with the crowd.
Yeah.
Which that I'm not okay with.
I think you let Drew get if you want to let Drew get his moment, let him get it from the Miz. And then at the following pay-per-view, let Drew be the transitional champion for that moment. Let Bobby Lashley be the guy that takes Drew out. You know what I mean?
I will be all right with that as well. I will be absolutely all right with that.
And then you let Bobby Lashley run with it.
But I will say, my biggest thing is I would love to see Lashley as champion at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So we got it with we got it with Kofi, and I would love to see Lashley. I think Lashley's really deserving of it. He went when he left WWE the first time. He went to he did his Bellator thing. He did with the Impact and he honed his skill. He showed that he had the right stuff to be a champion, to be the champion anywhere he went. And now he's finally getting his chance in the WWE to do that thing.
Yeah, and I think he will. I hope, I always hope that they don't drop the ball with storylines that they want to see, and I don't think they're going to do that here. It's his time. Drew's been running back and forth with the title for a year, and you can still have him chase it. Like Z always says, he likes to see that chase. This is a good opportunity for it.
And it's obvious that Drew is their guy for Raw.
All right, so moving on from the Elimination Chamber, what do you give the Elimination Chamber 1 to 10?
6.5. It was all right.
Yeah, I'm right about there. Maybe about a 7 because, I anticipated the Miz at the end at some point cashing in the Money in the Bank, but when it actually happens and the Money in the Bank holder wins the title, it's kind of a surprise. So, I'm always one for a surprise here and there. So I'll give it a 7.
I gave it a 6.5 because it wasn't even that It's the only reason I would is everything happened after Elimination Chamber at this point is why it's a 6.5. If I had a little bit more substance to Elimination Chamber, it would have been higher. I feel like it was just empty.
Yeah, you were kind of left wanting more.
Yeah, but it didn't make me want to watch it either SmackDown or Raw.
Yeah. Which the week before, totally different story with the NXT pay-per-view. I was ready. NXT was the first, aside from Raw, I watched NXT before I watched anything else this week. Or, last week, whatever. All right, so moving on. Probably one of the stories of the week. And for a lot of people, it came as a shock. To me, it did. Newest AEW signing, Paul White, aka The Big Show, going to AEW. Paul White is a dude that, he's been around the block. We've seen him in different companies throughout the years. He's been around
only two. Was the Giant in WCW.
You know what I mean, though? Like, he wasn't just strictly a WWE guy. And he's been in the business.
WWE.
Yeah, and
22.
Well, and he is somebody that it felt like he was WWE at this point in time until the day he died. You know what I mean? And the last few months when he was in WWE, you kind of saw him not doing a whole lot. I mean, he's getting older, but then, Randy Orton, who's been in the business not quite as long as him, as far as I know, taking out, Big Show and belittling him, in the back on Legends Night and making him look like a punk. And so I'm not saying that Paul White, Big Show, whatever you want to call him, I'm not saying that he has any ill will to WWE, but if you're not happy with the way that they're putting you, the direction that you're going with the company, and you're still in your heart and in your mind, and you still want to do what you do best and live out your passion, why couldn't you go to someplace like AEW? In my mind, it's like more power to you.
It's any other job. It's like any other job. If you're not happy with where your position in, leave. There's always opportunity. We've also said, like, at this point of wrestling, WWE is not the end-all be-all anymore. There are so many places you can go. And especially with the whole Forbidden Door being open now, anywhere you go, you can end up anywhere now.
Right. Well, and, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, AEW said that they weren't going to pull over, ex-WWE guys, and then they just keep doing it and whatever. You know what?
Okay.
Honestly, get the fuck out of here with that argument, because AEW
we can
is
argument
its own...
too right now, because not even four, like maybe like not even, it's like 4 or 14% of their roster are ex-WWE guys, statistically.
Well, and honestly, what do you expect these guys to do? What do you expect not only AEW, but guys like Paul White, John Moxley, Chris Jericho, Matt
Cardona.
What do you want them to do? Like, they still want to wrestle. And if AEW is there as a top competitor to WWE, they're willing to pay them the money. They're willing to give these people TV time, put them in storylines that they like, or whatever they want to do. Paul White, he's not even going to be really a wrestler as far as I know. They said he's going to be on AEW's newest TV program on YouTube on Mondays, commentary, and then he's going to work in the ring. That was their official statement, but you don't really know what that means. But so you're saying that fuck AEW for hiring all these WWE guys. So fuck those guys for getting another job. Fuck Paul White. Fuck Matt Hardy. It just, to me, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. Why does it affect you so much that you sit there and you complain that AEW is going in that direction? You know what? They have to build on something. They have to have this older talent that is there to coach these younger guys. This is still a young company. AEW isn't 20 years old. They're 2 years old, almost, 2019. They're not even 2 years old. So you have to have guys like this, Sting, whatever, to sit there help these guys get over, no matter in what capacity.
And that's
And
what they're doing.
eventually they will filter out, and eventually AEW will have these younger stars and guys that weren't ex-WWE guys get to the top.
So look at Team Taz, and look at the whole Team Taz and Darby Allin Sting feud. You really didn't know who most of these guys were unless you're like a mark like us. We knew who Ricky Starks was because of NWA.
Yeah.
I'm a big Impact guy. I knew who Brian Cage was because of Impact and Lucha Underground. But to the casual fan, these are relatively unknowns. You put these guys with a guy like Taz, who's an established guy through ECW and WCW. He worked for WWE for a while. He was doing commentary, and he was part of the Aces and Eights and Impact when they had that whole thing going. He's a well-known, he's a household name in professional wrestling. Sting is one of the most recognized names in professional wrestling. Working with Darby Allin. You're getting these guys over. Chris Jericho working with Sammy Guevara, Santana Ortiz, like the whole inner circle thing. These are relatively MJF, like these are relatively people like you really don't know unless you watch wrestling a lot. So all these people talk about these ex-WWE guys. They have Miro with Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford. Working at Angle with Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor.
Well, and honestly, if you look at the bigger picture here, like you said, Sting working with whoever, Miro working with whoever, you have Chris Jericho working with whoever. That is drawing attention. You have to have, okay, let's just stick MJF with Santana Ortiz against the Young Bucks. Okay, casual fan doesn't give a shit, but you throw that name in the hat, Chris Jericho. Okay, now you've piqued my interest. You throw you want him, oh, you've piqued my interest. Sting, now you've piqued my interest. So they're doing this. They have purpose with this. It's not just bringing these old dudes so they can just get over and no. I mean, that might be a little part of it, but it's also to draw attention to these other guys.
Like that's the same thing when Cody was his TNT champion.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know who Eddie Kingston was. Darby Allin, like that's how Darby Allin first got his name out there, was having those pretty decent matches with Cody.
Well,
this is Lance Archer.
And it's just another thing for AEW to try and capitalize on. You bring in a guy like Paul White who can be there for the locker room, offer his, insights and educate a lot of these younger guys. Yeah, I mean, that dude, he's probably got stories that'll last you months and tips and tricks and, his opinions. And if you're trying to succeed in this business, why wouldn't you take advice from these dudes that have been around the block, like Paul White, Chris Jericho? Yeah, okay, you want to complain about Chris Jericho being a little bit slower, being a little fatter. Dude's almost 50 years old, but you know what? You can't tell me that the dude, he can still work. He can still go in the ring. He's fine.
He can still pull off a lion salt.
So I don't know. Like it's so irritating. The wrestling, the IWC is just, they're so annoying sometimes. You know what I mean? And like
sometimes they have a point. Sometimes they just bitch to bitch.
And that's why I value like our opinions so much. And I am biased because I'm on the show, but I think that our thoughts and opinions are very much where we care about all these different shows, not just to provide people with information, but because we're wrestling fans. You know what I mean? It could be Ring of Honor, it could be New Japan, it doesn't matter, but we all want to see them succeed for the good of the sport, Fuck. All right, so let's move on. So we're talking about AEW. We'll keep on the AEW train. AEW Revolution is coming up Sunday, March 7th, only on pay-per-view.
Or Bleach Report Live.
Yeah. This has potential to be a pretty good pay-per-view, as most AEW pay-per-views are pretty good.
Could be like last year, where a lot of people said it was the best pay-per-view of the year.
Exactly. And I think that has the potential to be that, maybe even a little better. I've got the card listed right now. Right now, you've got the first match that we'll talk about is the Face of the Revolution ladder match, where you've got Lance Archer, Penta El Zero Miedo, Scorpio Sky, Cody Rhodes. Seems like they're gonna have a couple other guys involved in this match.
Supposed to be 6 people.
The winner will face the TNT Championship champion Darby Allin. I'm always up for a good ladder match. You know what I mean? And right now, the 4 dudes that you have in this match, don't get any better than that, honestly.
You got your Monster and Archer. You got a ladder match guys who do excellent ladder matches like Penta, Cody, who's an established name in that match. I think Pac's in there, isn't he?
I didn't see that just yet when I looked up the card, but that could have been from a couple days ago or so. I think he should be. If he's not, he should be.
Scorpio Sky's in there, I know. And having Scorpio Sky, I would love to see Scorpio Sky would have run as a TNT champion.
Yeah, me too. He's awesome.
And I feel like he had a great 2019, but then 2020 is kind of slid by the wayside. But also, he's also shown that he's been working on other projects since then.
Well, now you have SCU that's not really in a prominent role on AEW, so it's a good opportunity for him. Our next match that we've got the tag team Casino Battle Royale. AEW tag teams. I mean, these tag teams really with nothing better to do other than be in this match. The winners will.
They're showing love for the tag teams.
They are.
We don't see.
That was my next point, is that, hey, they're giving them this opportunity. You don't see that with WWE. And they've got good tag teams involved in this match. You've got Butcher and the Blade. You've got Santana Ortiz, Private Party, Dark Order. I'm assuming we're going to see Angelico and Jack Evans.
TH2.
TH2. In this battle. And I like their Casino Battle Royales, whether it's singles or tag teams. I like the format. If you're not familiar with the format, you've got a few guys or maybe a few, and I don't know if there won't be a ton of tag teams, but so you said they're going to have 2 tag teams start?
Yeah, 2 tag teams start is over the top. And they have every other team enters 90 seconds. I'm looking at it right now.
So if one of the tag team members gets eliminated, is the whole
both.
tag
It got to be
team
both.
eliminated? Okay.
It has to be both. It's to the last team / competitor is what it says right here.
Yeah, I think they learned from that, because I feel like they had something similar to this a while back, or maybe just a regular battle royale.
No, because it was a while back, because this is what they did last time when the Young Bucks were supposed to be picking out whoever wanted. They were going to pick out the Good Brothers to be their opponents for Revolution when MJF and Jericho won.
Mm-hmm.
So they were doing that. So that they already did. So they already kind of played around with this concept on Dynamite already.
Even though we don't know all the teams, this still sets up a really good match. And that's the thing, we've been talking about on this show, is how important tag teams are or are not. WWE are not. AEW, while they're not featuring in main events, but they still are relevant. All these tag teams I just mentioned that are in the match, they're all good teams. There's not like a jobber team that's on there, or a comedy team. They all can go in the ring.
I got to think they'll put Cassidy and Taylor in there. They're kind of a comedy team.
I like that idea, but
and Dark Order's kind of a comedy team too, as well. But they're a legit comedy team.
But they can still go. You know what I mean? They're not just there to get eliminated.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, I did see another match on there where you have Miro and Kip Sabian against Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor. So I don't know if we'll see. I don't know if we'll see them in the Battle Royale.
Battle Royale. So they won't. They don't have a tendency of double booking yet.
So with that match, I like the storyline being built. That's a little bit comedy, but again, you've got all these dudes that can go, and Orange Cassidy, they're slowly pushing to be one of their I don't want to say maybe a main event guy, but one of their featured attractions.
Yeah, he's got to be a marquee player in that company.
And I'm honestly looking forward to it. I've liked the story so far with the wedding with Kip and Penelope. I love Penelope Ford. Let me just say that first and foremost, that she's lined up to be my third wife.
Waifu material.
But yeah, this should be another good match. My question is, where has Trent Beretta been?
He's hurt.
Oh, okay.
That's why they. I know he's been hurt. He's supposed to be out for like 6 months to. It was like they said 6 months to a year.
Wow.
Same thing with Anna Jay. On the Dark Order, she's out with a shoulder injury for 6 months to a year. And she was supposed to be a big part of that women's tournament, which now I believe that they once again cards subject to the change.
Yeah.
Because by the end of this week, we're gonna know the women's title for Revolution.
Well, and that's another match that they're saying is going to be on the card. Hikaru Shida facing the winner of that tournament. But on Dynamite the other day, they had mentioned that match is going to take place on March 3rd, which is the Dynamite this coming week, leading up to Revolution. So
I thought it was supposed to be the final. Or
that's well, I know tonight on Bleacher Report they're going to have the finals of each side.
The semis.
So
the finals of each side.
The Japanese final and the American final tonight. So I don't know. I think it makes more sense to put it on Revolution so that way you have a women's match on there. But it probably was just somebody that fucked up and said March 3rd instead of March 7th. But so you've got that potential match. You've also got Matt Hardy against Hangman Page. The winner of this one is going to take home the Losers Quarterly Earnings.
That's a funny ass story.
Yeah, and at first I wasn't crazy about the whole Matt Hardy type storyline. I think it's starting to work.
Carney is growing on you.
It's starting to work. And I think him and Adam Page will put on a hell of a match. Adam Page is another one of those guys where really anybody that you put him in the ring with, he looks good. And then you've got Matt Hardy, who, yeah, he's getting older, but he can still go in the ring too. You know what I mean?
Said, he's also one of those guys like former WWE guys working with the lesser knowns.
And it's to get the spotlight on Adam Page. Adam Page is one of the
best. Private Party.
Yeah, and their Private Party, Adam Page, they're some of the best workers that this company has. And you just want to do something to get a light on them. And this is what you do. And I'm sorry, whether I like the storyline or not, it just makes good business sense. When you look at it from that standpoint and look at the bigger picture, it just makes sense.
Build your young men and women.
From there, we have Brian Cage and Ricky Starks against Sting and Darby Allin in a street fight. At first, I was kind of meh about this because I didn't know what we would really expect from Sting. It was a little snippet on Wednesday, but you saw a little bit on his ability to work in the ring. And he looked good. He looked quick, and I don't know how long he'll last, but he looked good. He drug out Taz's son in a body bag, and he came down to the ring and he took out Brian Cage, and Darby Allin took out Ricky Starks, and he looked good for the 30 to 40 seconds that he was doing a couple moves. And so I think this should be it'll be a good match. Another one of those matches where you bring your main attraction in to draw some attention to your other stars.
Yes. So this whole thing, like, I like the reason I do like it. It's a good example of long-term storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
This whole Darby Allin Team Taz feud has been going for almost half a year, I believe, at this point, since he won that title. And now at this point, since he's won the title, yeah, and then you bring in Sting and everything they've done. Like Sting took a vicious ass powerbomb from Cage a couple weeks back.
Yeah,
and he sold the hell out of it.
he took it.
So I'm really I'm excited about the story building here. The match itself, I don't have the highest expectations for it. I'm just like, I want to see where all these guys go from here.
Right. Well, on the idea of Darby Allin and Sting teaming together, again, I'm going to say it again. You're drawing, you're painting a picture for Darby Allin. Darby Allin has, he's got a good it factor. He's a smaller guy, but the dude can take an ass kicking, and he can kick people's ass, and he sells, and he is technically sound, and he has an it factor about him, and he's one of these guys that
Look at the guys they have him working with. The AEW obviously has stock in this kid,
right? And you could see that from the beginning. Him and Cody had a match, 4 months into AEW's inception, and they put on a hell of a show.
They did a time limit draw, and I believe Cody has 2 W's and Darby has the big one.
Mm-hmm. So, it just, further evidence that, when you look at it from a different viewpoint other than WWE guys, they're trying to get these other guys over. Another match you have on the card, you've got the Young Bucks against Jericho and MJF for the AEW World Titles. This should be a killer match. You had added to the storyline, you've got Mama and Papa Buck getting involved, and Jericho and MJF took out Papa Buck on Wednesday, slamming him against the semi truck, and he's bleeding all over the place. I about pissed my pants laughing every time MJF and Jericho do the Young Bucks, do one of these. I think the story is great. I think it's great that they got the parents involved. That adds that level of a personal issue. What do you think?
I'm actually fine with this one too. Once again, long-term storytelling. We got some good storytelling to this, and it doesn't feel like it's just thrown together. It feels like they actually thought about what they're going to do to make you invest into this match, into this story. And we all know almost anything Chris Jericho touches turns to gold. The guy's got a champagne after goofing around after winning the AEW championship in Gnarly.
Which is delicious, by the way. We had it on the show.
I know, I bought it.
Yep.
So that was so pretty much it. Like Jericho, MJF is literally was something we're gonna get into later. One of the most charismatic people in professional wrestling today. The Bucks are hands down probably one of the best tag teams in the world today. And they're probably one of the most decorated tag teams in the world today, too, if you think about everything they've done prior to AEW, including winning these AEW tag titles.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the match. I think it'll be a hell of a match. When MJF first got with the Inner Circle, my brain is trained to WWE logic, and not so much as of today, but when in the past it's trained to WWE logic, where I was like, okay, MJF's going to join the Inner Circle, and pretty soon he's going to turn on him, and blah, 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 blah. And that hasn't happened yet. I still think it will, but the fact that it's not happening today, it's not happening in a week from now, probably won't happen in a month from now, but I like that a hell of a lot better than doing it so quick. And like you said, you have this long-term story going with MJF, Jericho, the Bucks, and he may not turn on them, because now you're at the point where, well, what if they win these titles, and how long are they going to run with them, and whatever. So to me, it makes sense, and I'm really enjoying the story behind it.
See, the story I was getting from here is, in what MJF told the Inner Circle is, MJF is going to tear apart the Inner Circle from the inside. We already got rid of Guevara.
One down.
And I think Santana and Ortiz are next, and that's why you involved them inside the tag team picture. Him and Jericho in the tag team picture. the last person he's going to try to get, and then Hager and Wardley already have their little beef or whatever. So we were already working on Hager as well.
Yep.
And the way they're doing it is good, slow burn, which they've done with everything MJF story. Wise.
And the slow burn is good because it makes it that much more important when the payoff finally happens. And I think that's been one of the WWE's biggest problems is because you anticipate where they're going. And if you've watched it long enough, it's going to happen, and it happens too quick. Even if MJF is going to tear apart the Inner Circle, it works when it's long term because they add all these elements in between.
Yeah, they just give you no foreplay, no nothing.
Right. No finger in the butt, no nothing. So you've got that match, and then the main event, the main event of the night, the exploding barbed wire death match.
Holy
Smitty,
shit.
Have you ever seen an exploding barbed wire death match?
No, but when I heard this was going to be the main event, I went on YouTube and started looking up clips.
Mm-hmm.
And I seen some CZW clips of this, and I seen some Japanese clips of this match. And I'm expecting a fucking bloodbath.
Well, if
also,
it's
I feel
anything,
like this is anything I'm thinking it's the way to write Moxley off of AEW television for a while to be a father.
Yep. And if it's anything like their unsanctioned match that happened at Full Gear, the Lights Out match, that match is infamous in AEW. And for a while, a lot of people can only talk about that. If it's anything like that, then you're in for a show. And not everybody's into the death match. I understand that. I don't have a problem if you don't really care for them, but it is what it is. And like you said, it is a perfect way to write Moxley off of TV for a while to let him go home and tend to his family.
And this is also something that is really, I'm not gonna say super unique, because once again, we just watched Barbed Wire Massacre for Impact last month. So we can't say it is something unique because we don't see things like this often anywhere.
Right.
So this is one of the things that makes it interesting. And so it's something this is one thing I'm the most excited for on this card.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When was the last time you actually seen a death match? Or even if they use the term death match.
Well, you don't see it on main main event shows like on AEW, WWE. You don't see
even
that.
Even in New Japan, AAA, and everywhere else, you don't hear the term death match often.
Right. You don't get matches like, okay, you'll get an Inferno match, you'll get a Hell in a Cell.
Massacre.
Right, you'll get those, but if you pay attention to wrestling, even a little bit more than a casual fan, you had to have heard the term death match before. So you know that you're in for, like you said, a fucking bloodbath. And that's exactly what we're in for.
Adulterated fucking violence.
And I'm not saying you need to see the blood for the match to be good, but it's going to be fucking violent. It's going to be very violent. Like, put the kids to bed violent. And I'm not saying if they don't have the most violent match that it won't live up to the hype, because we've seen these two go in matches before, and their matches are always top notch. So the match itself, the wrestling part of it, it's going to be good. But when you get to the violent factor, adding that element into it, it's just going to take it to a whole new level. So I'm looking forward to AEW Revolution. Again, it's next Sunday. Next Sunday morning on our show, we'll be making our picks through Pro Wrestling Scorecards. They'll be releasing that card later this week. I think they'll do it Friday because the pay-per-view is on a Sunday. So you'll see the card come out
on Thursday after the weekly show.
When they do, make sure you go to Pro Wrestling's digital.prowrestlingscorecards.com. It is an open beta now. You can sign up for free. They don't spam you. They don't shoot you with ads or sell your email to other companies. We've been working with these guys since their inception, and they are definitely in it for the fan. The only time you'll see emails is when the scorecard is released, when the scorecard is about to lock, and when the scorecard is locked, because you're going to want those reminders if you're playing to make sure you get your picks in.
It also
You know,
makes
so
each one of these pay-per-views so much more fun and enjoyable to watch.
100%. And you're not just picking the winners. You're picking the winners of the match, but you're picking all these little side bets in each match, like how many near falls, what type of weapons, how many weapons, this, that, and the other. So, you know, it's like fantasy football for wrestling. It adds a really good element to make it that much more exciting. So definitely check them out, digital.prowrestlingscorecards.com. Okay, now we're going to get to the meat and fucking potatoes. This week we had the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards, the winners announced. Unky Dave and company, Dave Meltzer, released their picks for, well, we're about to go over quite a few of them. We're not going to go over all of them because there's a lot of them that we just don't really need to discuss. But with this, you've got a ton of different categories from, you know, wrestler of the year, match of the year, who's the best on the mic, who's the best women's wrestler, who's got the biggest dick, all this stuff. You know, so we're going to talk about that. And now these winners, these awards, they're not like the end all be all. So if you're not really familiar with it, it's not like, oh, John Moxley was voted wrestler of the year. He was voted wrestler of the year by these people over here. You know what I mean? Or, you know,
technically
it's like,
all around the board this year, he actually was.
Right. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like this is like the Oscars, like the Academy Awards. These are just certain people's opinions on the matter. Some people respect their opinions. A lot of people don't. But on some level, they do matter to a point because. So to kick it off, you do have the Luthez Ric Flair Award. This is the wrestler of the year, John Moxley. Personally, okay, but at the same time, you know, I can see why they voted him in as wrestler of the year, because he held the AEW title for you know, a good chunk of the year. This is the year of 2020. He had a lot of really good matches. Smitty, what do you think?
Thought it was the right pick, honestly, because you mentioned his run AEW as AEW champion, but also going into the pandemic, he's also been an IWGP United States champion. The guy was pretty much working on two fronts, just like like I said, if anybody else that probably could have been a close second, I would have said Kenny Omega. Once again, he's another guy who's working on two fronts. He's a AAA mega champion. Mm-hmm. But I think Moxley proved a lot of people wrong, because leaving WWE, people said he wasn't the best wrestler. He went to New Japan and showed that the guy can actually go in a wrestling match. Mm-hmm. Had a great G1. Once again, United States champion, AEW champion, run as AEW champion. Some of the other stuff they voted him on in here, was like, yeah, I wouldn't put him there. When they said like best feud, I'm like, no.
So you got John Moxley as wrestler of the year. Most outstanding wrestler, you got Kenny Omega. And I definitely think that's well deserved. I think, you know, he started off in AEW kind of under the radar, and then the last, you know, nearly year, really ever since he got the tag titles with Hangman Page, he has just slowly started going up with AEW, and now he's skyrocketing. And now he's working with the Forbidden Door being opened, and he's your AEW champion. He's a heel. He's working in Impact. He's still the title holder in AAA, right?
Yep, the mega champion.
Right. So he's definitely getting his work in. And
Well, he's
the
defended
dude,
it. He's defended that title, the AAA Mega Championship, on Dark a couple times before the pandemic.
oh, okay. So yeah, dude is definitely getting his work in. Tag team of the year, you got the current AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks. I think you can make an argument for a couple other teams with that. I don't know. We did our picks towards the end of 2020 on our tag team of the year. I don't remember off the top of my head who I picked. I don't necessarily know if
A
it
lot
would
of
have
us
been the
put
Young Bucks.
I think we all picked the top 5.
Yeah.
And like we all agreed that the Street Profits were a top 5 team, and I think we rolled to consensus that if we had to pick anybody as a tag team of the year, we would have said the Street Profits because of the 2020 they had.
Well, regardless, you got the Young Bucks as tag team of the year according to Wrestling Observer. Best on interviews, you could make an argument for a couple other guys, but Eddie Kingston took the award for this. They didn't get that wrong. And like I said, you could have picked a couple other guys, and I don't think those would have been wrong picks. But Eddie Kingston, I became familiar with him as NWA started to pick up steam. I knew who he was, but I never really saw him, never really heard him on the mic. This dude, probably more so than anybody, speaks from the heart.
He makes you believe everything he's saying.
He sure fucking does. Like,
he's been a guest on our show.
If anybody can pull a promo and pull you in and make you think that he's really going to kill you, is Eddie Kingston.
That or you fuck with my Eddie. He's also one of those guys that people, the Blade and a Butcher out of obscurity in that company.
Yeah, I like them all working together with Butcher and Blade. I really like that a lot. If you haven't watched any Eddie Kingston stuff, if you've just been watching WWE or whatever, I mean, that alone is almost a reason enough to tune into AEW. You can't go on YouTube and look up NWA shit anymore because apparently Billy Corgan pulled all that content off of the NWA page. I don't know why. That's a story for another time. Best on or the promotion of the year, AEW. I
don't think I wouldn't argue. The only reason I would not argue that is because where AEW is now. We'll see. That once that Forbidden Door swung open toward the end of the year, everything else is kind of poured into it. And it seems like everybody's eating off of it now.
Well, it is hard to argue because that 2020 was the first year that AEW had the first full year. They didn't have their first pay-per-view until May of 2019, and they didn't have their first weekly show until 2019 was almost over. So 2020 was their first real full year with weekly shows, with pay-per-views. They had AEW Dark. They got Being the Elite on YouTube. So between all those different things, I can definitely see AEW as the promotion of the year because their pay-per-views always hitting the spot. Their weekly shows, I don't know, 9 times out of 10 are always one of the best of the week, if not the best, next to NXT. You can argue that. So yeah, I can definitely see AEW as the promotion of the year. And because I wouldn't have picked WWE to be the promotion of the year. I don't watch enough New Japan myself to say that they would be up there.
See, my thing about places like New Japan or Ring of Honor is you have easier access to Impact Wrestling than you do to Ring of Honor and New Japan and AAA, because these are, I get their international promotions and they're great promotions in their own right. But accessibility is the argument I would give against any of those other ones. I do believe that Impact does still, to this day, gets the shaft because of bad years of bad management.
Yes.
But they are like one of the people that's on the person who won most improved. Hey, I like Britt Baker. I think she's one of the most improved characters in professional wrestling in a long time. But if I had to give it to anybody, I would give it to Moose and the Impact. That most improved. Moose is so good that he got another title, the old TNA belt reinstated on Tuesday.
Moose is probably one of my top 5 favorite wrestlers right now. I mean, maybe top 3.
He's that damn good. He could have put him on a lisp.
Right. And you know, he's kind of improved on that list too. I mean, it's not gone.
He makes it work.
Yeah, he definitely makes it work. And it's not knocking anybody with a list, but it's, you know, I mean, if you want me to be honest, sometimes it's hard to look past that. You know what I mean? It is. And he's making it work for him. And he's doing that, showing people that have a speech impediment or something like that you can do it. You can make it work and you can still, you know, move forward and be one of the best. And props to him. Best weekly TV show again, AEW Dynamite. This is probably going to stir the pot a lot by that pick because, you know, you got the Wednesday night wars with AEW and NXT. I would probably agree with AEW being the best promotion. But I think it's it's tough because week to week, sometimes NXT is a little bit better, regardless of the rating part of it. Sometimes AEW.
I think that was the factor that the Wrestling Observer threw in there was the weekly ratings.
Yeah.
If it was a personal opinion, I literally would have put Dynamite and NXT as a tie. They would have tied with me, personally.
Yeah, I can see that. And, you know, we don't talk about, in my opinion, I don't think we talk about AEW enough. And I can see why, because, you know, I know that some people on the show, especially, you know, Mikey, he's not too thrilled with AEW and some of the things they're doing. And that's fine, you know, rightfully so. But their weekly show, their matches, their wrestling matches, you try and overlook some of their faults. Their matches are awesome. And I really enjoy their storylines. I'm not knocking NXT for any of that, but as far as AEW is concerned, you know, I really enjoy it, but I also really enjoy NXT too. I agree, man. I think I would have put them as a tie. To me, ratings don't dictate the better show when it comes to those two. You know what I mean?
I've also said that if you moved NXT to Thursday, both of those shows will probably hit 1 million viewers a week.
I could agree with that for sure. I think we will see that too. I don't know which one will move. It'll probably be NXT, but yeah, if you had them on separate nights, I think they would be, honestly, NXT would probably win more often than not.
Technically wouldn't be that Wednesday night war without them on the same. Like I said, both shows will hit 1 million.
Pro Wrestling Match of the Year, you have the Young Bucks and the Young Bucks versus Adam Page and Kenny Omega, AEW Revolution 2020. This was one of my picks as match of the year.
I think it was mine, actually.
Yeah, it was a fantastic match. If you haven't seen it, look it up however you need to, because these two teams went off. Smitty, talk about it just for a minute.
Yeah, so this match was pretty much just the Elite just showing their ass just because they could at this point. We had the long-term storytelling of how the Bucks got to where they are at this point. We all knew that everybody in the Elite eventually was going to hold a title at some point or another. Cody got it in first with the TNT title. Currently, you have Omega and the Bucks with them. And right after Cody, you had Omega and Page with the tag titles. So this tag match was probably textbook tag team wrestling to a certain degree. I liked how it had a slow burn, a slow build to it. It was you had the basic tag team tropes. We had hot tags and everybody hit their move spots. It was a fun match to watch in general. There was It was not. It was a little long for my taste to a certain degree, but it was just fun to watch. All right, and here's Nick.
Okay, sorry. I FedEx was at my door with my PS5, so I got a boner bigger than Tony Storm's thigh. So,
all right. I also got chubby.
So we left off on Young Bucks and Adam Page.
Yeah.
Then you've got the United States, Canada MVP, going back to John Moxley. I'm not really familiar with too many dudes out of Canada. I mean, other than the obvious ones. So
I didn't see that one. Man, we had the whole thing printed. I just had the basic ones.
Yeah, I printed it from WrestlingInc.com. If you want to see the whole list, WrestlingInc.com. And I saw a list on Facebook, and I was like, okay, I read through it. And then this morning when I was doing some research for the show, I went to the website, and it just kept going and going. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah,
that's why I was like, we're not going to touch on all of them.
Yeah, like I said, because I got like some of the stuff that I got down, like some things I didn't agree with. I didn't agree with who they picked was most overrated. I don't think Bray Wyatt is an overrated wrestler. I think his usage in WWE is just terrible, which has always been.
Well, with that, you have most overrated. Yeah, Bray Wyatt.
I would put Goldberg there.
Yeah, I can't agree with the Bray Wyatt thing, because although I don't think he put forth some of the best matches, whether he was playing the Bray Wyatt character or whether he was playing the Fiend character, but the matches were still they were okay. They were okay to good. And then, I know
his usage. It was WWE's usage of the Bray Wyatt character.
When you look at the whole Fiend character as a whole, and the Firefly Funhouse and all that encompasses it, I can understand how you like Joe, how he looks at it as it's tickle butt. He thinks it's really fucking stupid. And honestly, I can, on some level, I can totally agree with it, because Joe, along with, everybody else on the show other than myself, you guys have been watching more wrestling over the last 30 years than I can even fucking fathom. So I can understand how he doesn't care for it. I totally get it. But for me, that I took a decade-long break up until 2015. I think it works. I think it is a little silly, but
North Cassidy, is it?
No. I'm not saying that. I think just sometimes, like the whole Firefly Funhouse, while I think it's funny, it's I don't know, it's a little too much, but it doesn't bother me. Not to say that it bothers anybody, but it doesn't bother me. And when you look back and you have a character like, I'm only going to compare The Undertaker because he's been one of the most talked about, infamous, recognizable characters of all time. It's kind of along those same lines. It's not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's one of those characters that if you watch wrestling on a consistent basis, you're never going to forget that the Fiend ever existed, or that the Firefly Funhouse ever existed, because whether it's good or bad, whether you like it or not, it's cemented into your brain as like a shitty commercial jingle that gets stuck in your head. So I can't say that the most overrated wrestler of the year is Bray Wyatt. I just can't agree with that. You want me to answer who I think is? I can't tell you. I'd have to really think.
I told you Oldberg.
Well, and honestly, you can't really argue that, because he's coming to these matches, mind you, less than a handful. It never works. It never works.
And it also goes back when they say worst match of the year was a swamp fight. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't that great, but it was better than Super Showdown with Goldberg and The Fiend.
Well, and Super Showdown, when you look at this list, it did come up as the worst major wrestling show was the WWE Super Showdown, February 27th. So exactly 1 year ago today from Saudi Arabia. To me,
after that.
These Saudi Arabia shows have never worked. There may have been a couple moments, like the Greatest Royal Rumble.
Titus sliding under the damn ring.
I fell asleep during that. I saw Titus slide under the ring, and that was a cool moment, and it was funny. We all had a good laugh. But to me, they've just never worked. So I think I definitely agree with that. But anyway, moving on from the worst stuff, you had the European MVP was the NXT UK champion Walter. I don't think anybody's going to argue that because the dude is just a dominant force. I would love to see Walter on Raw.
I want to see Imperium on Raw. Just the whole group.
And I agree. I love Imperium, and I think that them as a group could be another one of those factions, stables, whatever you want to call them, that could be in the top 5 or 10 of all time because all those dudes can work, and their charisma and their characters and the whole picture of all of them together with Walter as their leader is fucking awesome.
The issue with Imperium is the same issue with NXT. Everybody in NXT UK, they don't have exposure. They would like. I agree with you. If they had more exposure, they could be one of, if not the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. Like Alexander Wolf was with Sanity, and after the whole Sanity thing, he was floating. Like he seemed like he was just floating water until he joined Imperium.
And it works. It really works.
Eichner and Bartel were just, once again, treading water.
Well, and they were NXT tag team champions for a while, right?
Recently, but that's right before Breezango won them, I believe.
But they
were transitional team. They're great. They're a great tag team. They were transitional champions for the NXT titles.
And I think that the whole COVID thing, I know that COVID obviously hurt a lot of these storylines. Like, I think that if COVID wasn't a thing, that, NXT UK is, again, like a developmental system where we would see Imperium, because we were starting to see Imperium on NXT shows from time to time, and then you didn't. And I think by now,
Worlds Collide though earlier, back in January last year.
I think by now we would see them as a prominent role on NXT. They could have been battling the Undisputed era, or we would see them on Raw or whatever. And I've said it before. I think WWE is lacking in the whole faction thing. I like seeing that. I like seeing that because, singles wrestlers, tag team wrestlers, those are cool. But I like seeing those teams. That was always a big part for a lot of people growing up with NWO and DX and Nation Domination, whatever. I like that idea. Right. So had we not had COVID, unfortunately, I think that they would be playing a more prominent role. Women's wrestling MVP. I know a lot of you guys like on the show had this person in their top 5, if not their number 1, Bayley. As a wrestler, I would agree. I can't stand her. And I know that's her doing her job. I don't know. I've never been able to get on board with Bayley, whether she's face or heel.
Well, so my thing with Bayley is, let's say Bayley did her job, and her and Sasha pretty much carried that entire main roster pretty much through 2020 for the women's division. And it also showed the lack of interest in that women's division outside of 4 or 5 people. Personally, I think I picked Io Shirai as my top woman for in women's wrestling. Io Shirai has probably been the most dominant women's champion since Asuka in NXT. And she's having a good one, having great matches with just about with everybody. And hey, it's not just my Joshi boner for EO.
No, I would agree. Io Shirai is amazing in the ring. She doesn't need to be on the mic because her character carries over
Translates.
without even saying anything, without being on the mic. She doesn't need any mic time, and it all works. I would agree with Io Shirai there. Honestly,
if they treated Asuka like they treated Io, Asuka would be just as relevant of a champion.
Yeah, I kind of feel like they've dropped the ball a little bit with Asuka, unfortunately, because man, she's amazing. And then next year, I hope we see. I'm a big Bianca Belair mark.
Me too.
I hope that we see her at the top of the list because she is a powerhouse. She can go. She's super athletic. She can take a beating. She can give a beating. Her mic skills are amazing. Even though I know
go here now.
that shit right here, you don't even go here. That shit was hilarious.
I left WWE like that's almost every woman I grew up with.
Well, and I know WWE is, as far as the mic work, they give them bullet points. So it's sort of scripted, but you can't really tell with her. And that's what I love about the people in WWE that really work the mic, because if you can take those bullet points that WWE is giving you and make them your own and really emphasize that fact and make it feel like it's coming from the heart, it really helps build your character. I think she's fantastic with that. So anyway,
next year I hope to see more Love Impact on here next year.
Yeah, and well, we're going to talk about that. Feud of the year: Jon Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. I don't know.
The Bailey Sasha.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with it because I don't think that we had enough time with those two feuding. The match that they ended up having, I think that was a good finish to it. I just don't think it was enough to say it was the feud of the year.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with your statement there. Let's say, if anything, Bailey versus Sasha was probably the best feud of the year. AEW had some decent feuds, but nothing that real. Like, you had some good feuds that were. Hey, you had Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho, which ended at Mimosa Mayhem. But yeah, it was memorable. I thought that was more memorable than Moxley versus Kingston. Let's see. Yeah, so you had a couple things, but that was not it.
Yeah, I think they missed the mark on that.
This whole team Taz versus Darby Allin is more interested in that, and that's still ongoing.
Yeah, and it's not taking anything away from those two guys because the mic work in there, the promos, the match that they had, that was all fine and well. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I really did. But to say that was the feud of the entire year, that's a stretch. That's definitely a stretch. Most charismatic, MJF, you can't argue that.
Yeah.
If you follow wrestling even half as much as we do, and you understand who MJF is and his character between his TV time, his Twitter, his Facebook, his unseen video footage, it's all him.
The interaction with him at what was it, All Out? If a Starcast.
Yeah. The dude, when we were at Starcast a couple years ago, I was recording him, and like an asshole, I stopped recording too soon. But they had one of those things where you took the sledgehammer to hit the thing up to hit the bell, and you'd win a T-shirt. So he comes up doing it, and he was taking his time, whatever. And I was like, we don't got all fucking day. And he's like, fat boy, you got all day. So he ripped on me, and then he ripped on somebody else next to me. Said, your mom should have aborted you. And that's the part that I didn't get on camera because apparently I don't know how to record people properly. And then later that weekend, he ripped on somebody for being handicapped. They were in a wheelchair. And you can sit there and say all day, well, that's not right. But you know what? Old school wrestling, character-wise, that is what they fucking do. That's what
this
they
is how
do.
Roddy Piper almost got stabbed a million times.
And he continues that to this day. Like I said, through all of his social media, on TV, YouTube, wherever you see him, he is and lives and breathes as
Maxwell
MJF.
Jacob Friedman.
And you know what? If you can't appreciate that, you shouldn't be watching wrestling. Sorry. Like, you know that behind closed doors, he's probably a super nice guy, like to his mom and brothers and sisters maybe, or a wife or whatever. But when you see him in public, he is MJF. And I think that's how it should be. You know? You've got
almost like Mark Calloway with the Undertaker gimmick. It was protected so long until like over the last year. Whenever Mark Calloway went out, he was the Undertaker.
Yeah,
until recently.
I never saw any pictures of him in public, probably until about the last year or two. Maybe once or twice. But now I see like what
you
things
see Mark
being,
Calloway.
Yeah, you see him with his wife, you see him smiling, you know, whatever with whoever that, you know, all these things are coming out now. And he lived and breathed that Undertaker character, and rightfully so, you know. Bryan Danielson Award, Best Technical Wrestler, Zack Sabre Jr. Smitty, I know you're more familiar with this guy than I am, so
I think Zack Sabre Jr. is he's one of those guys that should win that award, and probably the most deserving. He is probably the best technical wrestler in the world right now. He's just not everybody's cup of tea, to be honest. He's a smaller guy with good wrestling capability. To the American audience, the only experience that most people have had of him is with his short run in the Cruiserweight Classic a couple of years back, and it wasn't his best performance. If you go and watch his New Japan work, and you watch his other work when he was doing IWC and in over across the pond, that he is a great wrestler. It's just that the American audience, people who probably read the Wrestling Observer, you don't really know who Zack Sabre is unless you are watching New Japan.
So he's in New Japan now.
Yes.
Okay.
But like I said, but also I'll say guys like Pete, like if you put Pete Dunne there, I think that would have been a good choice as well. Because Pete Dunne's another guy who's a great technical wrestler. He's also a hybrid.
A lot of experience with New Japan. I keep saying that I'm going to try getting into them more, and I want to. But
it's a perfect time, especially with the whole Bullet Club fiasco.
With everything going on now, it's hard.
Even if you want to get into a little bit of it, just look up Tama Tonga on social media, or he's got a Twitch channel as well. It's called Tama's Island.
Yeah, as far as that goes, that's probably the extent of my knowledge because it's been something that's been pushed into the limelight. You know what I mean? I don't know. I hope to get into New Japan a little bit more. And I think once I actually stop watching Raw, I'll probably get into it more.
You'll be a lot happier.
Let it go.
Yeah. Mikey and I just clip note Raw from what I understand at this point.
I probably should. The best brawler, we got that's the Bruiser Brody Memorial, John Moxley again. Best flying wrestler, Ray Phoenix. Most underrated wrestler, Ricochet.
I kind of agree on that because his talent is so talented. And just one of those guys like Bray Wyatt where he's underutilized. When he is utilized, he's in the wrong position.
This
whole
is.
angle with him and Retribution is fucking garbage.
When him and Aleister Black came up to Raw as a tag team, they were working really well as a tag team, and you kind of felt like they were going to give them a push, and then all of a sudden they split them up, and shit just stopped, especially for Ricochet. And now
more so Aleister.
Now for Aleister that you can see. And it's very disheartening because these dudes have talent. Like Ricochet just isn't another guy that can do flips and trapeze shit. The dude can go. The dude is a great worker. And they're just kind of like, who are you gonna? Well, throw fucking Ricochet, So,
if you look at his stuff when he was Prince Puma in the Lucha Underground, that's when I realized he wasn't just all high dives, flips, and zippity doo dah, all that good stuff.
Rookie of the Year, arguably Pat McAfee.
The funny thing is, when I read that, I'm like, who else had a pretty decent rookie year? And I'm like, I can't even say Dominic Mysterio because Dominic Mysterio is still kind of chained down by Daddy right now.
Yes.
And Pat McAfee came in and had 2 matches, and they were both really good matches. He had a pretty decent one-on-one with Adam Cole, and then after that War Games match, I've been really impressed with Pat McAfee. And he's one of those guys that is still living his gimmick in NXT through his social media and everything else he's doing.
Well, and, the only thing that I don't agree with that is the fact that you only saw him for that blip. You know what I mean? But like you said, who can you really say had a better rookie year than him? Even if it was short-lived, there wasn't really a whole lot of rookies that made quite the impact, no pun intended, that he did. Best TV announcer.
I think we all kind of did this one because, honestly, I would have gave that to straight up Tony Schiavone or Taz.
And Excalibur got the nod.
I would have switched but I would have gave him the worst.
Honestly, I wouldn't have given him the
worst because that Michael Cole at the worst. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Cole, but it's because Michael Cole's so generic. It's not that he's terrible. He's just. I get that JR had his catchphrases. Jerry the King Lawler has his catchphrases, but even back then, if you go back and watch Attitude Era stuff when those two were on commentary, it wasn't they were just saying it to say it. It's not like every time Austin came out, we're like, bitch is about to pick up. No, that's not what happened every time Austin came out. Whenever Sasha Banks is on her way to the entrance, it's boss time.
It's boss time.
Or whenever Roman Reigns is on his way to the ring, here comes the big dog. Yeah, or vintage Randy Orton. Like, his catchphrases are just, they're coming at that point.
Well, and yeah, it sounds like he is pulling himself straight out of WWE 2K whatever.
Yeah.
And in a match itself, he's fine. But when you throw that shit out there.
Because Elimination Chamber, he was calling Uso Splash or the Big Splash. He was calling those frog splashes.
It doesn't bother me. I think with Excalibur, I think it bothers me a little more because of Excalibur's tone. Like when there's a big move, Excalibur, number one, never shuts up. Number two, he's always sounding like he's trying to push out a big fucking turd.
So the one thing I appreciate about Excalibur is Excalibur, like Taz, they know the industry, they know wrestling.
Oh, definitely.
And I agree with you. It's Excalibur's presentation is terrible. And that's why I will put him at the worst announcer. He needs to work on the way that he says things, presents things. When he yells Tope Suicida, I literally cover my ears.
every time.
He's the indie-rific guy. He's the guy, the announcer that they pulled you in to get that indie crowd. Jim Ross was to pull in a WWE crowd. Shivani's going to pull in that old school WCW crowd. Excalibur was there for the indie marks.
And, you know, with Excalibur, I think if he would calm down a little bit, and like you said, with Tope Suicida, when you say it every single time it happens, it's like, fuck, here it comes.
Yeah,
you know?
Let's see. If anybody, wasn't Mauro Ranallo still on commentary about it at the beginning of the year for WWE?
I think so, yeah.
I would have gave him the best announcer.
Yeah, I thought Mauro Ranallo was great.
Mauro Ranallo just had personal issues with the company and certain personnel.
Now he's doing stuff for either boxing or UFC.
Boxing
maybe.
and MMA. He's doing boxing and MMA commentary now.
And good for him. I did like him a lot. I thought maybe his energy was a little bit over the top, but that's okay because his catchphrases, it worked, and his catchphrases
Mamma mia.
It wasn't always the same. He did have those signature ones, like you just said, but he didn't overdo it. Like, it wasn't like he was saying Mamma Mia 7 times during the night. Whereas with Excalibur, anytime somebody does a Tope Suicida, he's going to say it. Anytime, whether it's once or 8 times in a night.
Yeah.
Like you said, worst TV announcer, Michael Cole. Best major wrestling show, AEW Revolution pay-per-view. We've talked about that quite a bit from last year. The worst Super Showdown, we did talk about that a little bit too. Any Saudi Arabian show, and I'm not knocking the fact that it's in Saudi Arabia, but it's fodder. It's fodder.
At the last of this one, this is water this time.
They could have easily done without those shows. They weren't necessary.
Best non-wrestler was Taz. And when I say non-wrestler, I'm hoping I hope they're talking like manager, because Taz has been an excellent manager.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. At first, I was kind of on the fence, but he's done a great job with Brian Cage, and now bringing his son into it, and Ricky Starks, and he jumps on the. Yeah. Speaking of him, where's he been? Is he injured too?
I don't know. He just hasn't been on. I think he's been on Dark a couple times, but I don't know if he's hurt or not.
Okay. He's
also been a good announcer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you know what? That just, is a testament to, because he used to be every week on the announce table.
He was with Smackdown and he was with Impact.
Yeah, he does a really good job with that. Worst match of the year, Braun Strowman versus The Fiend in the Swamp Fight. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the horror show at Extreme Rules was just garbage in it as of itself. It just didn't work. We all hated it. We all wish we could forget it.
Once again, there are 2 matches I can think of right now that both involved Bray Wyatt that were worse than that Swamp Fight. One was the Hell in a Cell with Seth Rollins. The other was the Saudi Arabia show where he dropped the Universal title to Goldberg. Those were 2 matches that were way worse than the Swamp Fight. At least Swamp Fight, you had the benefit of it being a cinematic match to a cinematic match.
Yeah, it just, I don't know. I could have did without it. It was,
and also the Swamp. By that point, the Swamp Fight was also a cinematic match where WWE were overdoing cinematic matches.
Well, and I remember you talking about that before. Like, cinematic matches would work until you started burning them out, and at that point, they were getting burnt out. Best booker and promoter of the year, Tony Khan of AEW.
I couldn't argue that right now at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much hate on Vince McMahon, and there's hate on Tony Khan too. But I mean, when you look at, you got to look at the bigger picture, and when you do, You can't say Tony Khan's doing a bad job because he's keeping those ratings up. They're winning the Wednesday Night Wars. Their pay-per-views are phenomenal. They have little issues here and there with, continuity in the matches as far as the referees concerned or whatever. But, you can't say WWE doesn't have those issues with storylines making sense, So best gimmick of the year, I would totally agree with Orange Cassidy.
I just don't agree how since Trent's injury, he's kind of slid down the car because I feel like they have him filling in that Trent spot with this Chuck Taylor thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's
no, keep going.
He's just filling in right now. I think he'd be somewhere else on the card right now if it wasn't for that. And they just need somebody to fill in for Trent so they can get this feud off.
At first, I didn't really know what to expect from Orange Cassidy because I would go online and watch some of his older matches, and he had that laziness about him, and then he'd kind of snap out of it for a little bit. But in AEW, it seems more so that he only has a little bit of that laziness, and then all of a sudden he turns it on, and when he turns it on, that dude can go. Worst gimmick. We've talked about it a little earlier. The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. I can't agree with that.
As I said, it's a very badly used gimmick in WWE. It's not bad. If it was used better, it already has the potential of being amazing. Just use the gimmick better. Use that mind of Bray Wyatt better.
Well, I think they're starting to they started to throw Alexa Bliss into the mix, and I think that was a really good idea. Although I do miss regular Alexa Bliss, but I think that was a good pick. It made sense to bring her into the whole the fray of it, and I think they're doing a good job.
I just would have used Nikki Cross because I don't think Alexa Bliss needed it.
No, I would agree. She didn't need it, but I still like it. It works.
Oh, I'm all right with it. But they just personal, cause I think when it comes to wrestling, everybody should have something. And if you don't have something, you could experiment with people that you're not doing anything with. Look at the Hurt Business. I said it last year. MVP was to come back. Nobody know we needed. Bobby Lashley was in a shit storyline with Lana. Shelton Benjamin was sitting in catering, and Cedric Alexander was just pretty much jobbing out to the stars. And look where they all are now.
Yeah.
When you give them something to do of relevance.
Well, and that's a good point. If you bring in Nikki Cross, it does make sense for her to be in there because, like you said, Alexa Bliss didn't need it. Nikki Cross did. Nikki Cross is doing dick right now.
Is that you already established Alexa Bliss as one of the women you did. At one point, it seemed like you cared about her more than anybody in that division. Mm-hmm. At one point. They're the shines off of Alexa Bliss to a certain degree.
And then the last category, the best pro wrestling documentary, by far, 100%, 150%, Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah. Especially after that one. The Owen Hart one was
that's the one they picked to be the quintessential winner of that category was the Owen Hart one.
They had a couple. They actually announced season 4, the next season, and they still a couple episodes they're going to do. One is going to be about Chris Canyon.
Well, and with Dark Side of the Ring, if you've never watched it, it is phenomenal. They get almost anybody involved in that particular storyline. They get them in, a private room with an interview. It's very candid. It's very open. It's very from the heart and truthful. When you
2-part Benoit episode,
the Benoit episode was draining, honestly, and so was the Owen Hart one. I think that season 2, when you started with Benoit and you ended with Owen Hart, it was a great way to start and end the season. And after we talked about this show where we actually watched it, the Owen Hart one, I was mad at the end of it. Like, I was heated because there's no reason that Owen Hart should have had the outcome that he did. There's no reason he should have died from that. It just, and it to this day, there's no reason that should have happened. And it was hard to watch. If you haven't watched it yet, if you got Vice TV, it's on demand somewhere. If you don't, it's on YouTube somewhere. You can
It's on
find
Hulu,
it.
I believe, as well.
You can find it and definitely go watch it. The Owen Hart one is an hour long, and
Benoit's a two-parter.
It is really good, and I'm glad they're bringing it back for a third season. I actually, just the other day, I didn't watch the one about the slap heard around the world, and I watched that one the other day, which was also really good. I didn't realize that. I watched 2020 sometimes, and I didn't realize that the reporter that got slapped was who it was, and so it was good shit. With that, it's after 1 o'clock. We're done. There is no Mikey. He's apparently still shaving the latex off his body. So we appreciate everybody tuning in today. Next week, we'll be back with our picks for AEW Revolution. Make sure you go to Pro Wrestling Digital. Sorry, let me start over. Digital.ProWrestlingScorecards.com this week. You'll be able to fill out your scorecard for the AEW Revolution pay-per-view. You can play against us and the whole entire community that's going to be filling it out. And then make sure to tune in to us next week at 11. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. We'll be here to fuck shit up and all that good stuff. So for now, we are your ring crew.
The champ, Smitty.
And the former champ, Transitional Koenig 19. And we are out.